guys, welcome to episode 24 of Sanj Surati Talks. The film world is an amazing place. I've just worked on some incredible projects over the last few days, and honestly, I just love the fact that you can meet so many exciting people and be really creative with them, whether it's like acting, filmmaking, sounds, like anything like that, production, writing, all of that. It's a crazy, crazy space. Whenever I work in that space, I get to meet some incredible people. Today, I've got one of the coolest guests. He is such a wonderful energy, really beautiful spirit, super talented. He's worked with some amazing actors, some amazing filmmakers. We met last year and we've been talking over, for a few months, and we managed to meet up for dinner just recently, and he's agreed to come on to the show. So I'm really happy to invite him to the stage. Please welcome the award-winning cinematographer, Mr. Denson Baker.
Hey, hello. Thank you, Sanj. What a lovely introduction.
How you doing, buddy? You all right?
I'm really good. Thank you for having me. I mean, I've listened to a number of your episodes, and you always have such fascinating and really intriguing people on your show. So I'm quite honoured that you're
a fan.
me.
You're a fan. Yeah. That's great. Denson is a fan of Sanj Surati Talks, right? You heard that first on this episode. No, brother, it was really good to meet you. Those of you listening, Denson and I met actually at a showcase for virtual production within the film space. And we, swapped deets. I started to kind of research some of the things he worked on. I was like, wow, this guy is amazing. And we met up for dinner, and I had to get you on the show. So thanks so much for giving us your time.
Absolute pleasure.
Denson, there's going to be people that are listening to this who don't know who you are. Give us a brief intro into who you are and what you do.
Yeah, well, I'm a cinematographer, also known as a director of photography, and I'm mainly involved as a director of photography on drama, feature films, and television, but also shoot documentaries and commercials. And as a cinematographer, I'm designing the visual style of a motion picture project, whether that's the technical aspects of choosing the cameras, the lenses, filters, things like that, to the all the creative aspects of the lighting and color palette. I'll be working with a production designer and costume and makeup, of course, but everything to do with lighting and camera and composition. I mean, that's my bag.
Awesome. So just with regards to like definitions of a cinematographer, because we've had a few cinematographers on the show in the past, and some people have messaged in just to ask like, what does a cinematographer do? Now you touched on that, but just give us your definition of what a cinematographer or a director of photography is for film.
Yeah, well, it really does vary with different projects, individual films to different scales of film. And I think my responsibility has kind of evolved over the years as you become more involved with bigger projects. I mean, it kind of starts out where I'm the guy with the camera and I'm physically, moving lights and positioning the camera and, doing a lot of that work myself too. As you're working on bigger productions, you'll have a much bigger team that you'll be leading. And sometimes I've done projects where I am purely a team leader of the lighting, camera and grips department, where I'll be, communicating and delegating what needs to happen to get it to get it all in place, where often I'm not even getting to touch a camera. I'll have a couple of camera operators and they'll have their camera assistants and I'll just be looking at monitors and directing that, where it becomes, the responsibility is the delivering of that visual style. And I would handpick who those people are that are working with me. Yeah, but it would vary to other times where even still on big projects, I thankfully get to still operate the camera. I particularly have it on my shoulder if it's doing a handheld scene or something with some drama that I really want to be there with the camera in an intimate way, capturing a performance. That's kind of a vague response to it, but yeah, it is a responsibility for the visual style of a motion picture project, I guess, is the general way of describing that.
Wow. How did you get into this industry?
Well, I've had a passion for it since I was a little kid. I mean, I've seen movies as a boy. I was just so fascinated in that world. And I'm from New Zealand originally, and moved to Australia, to Perth, Western Australia, which is about as far away from Hollywood and movie making as you could get at that point. But I just, saw this love of cinema, and then it kind of kicked in when my uncle let me borrow his video camera. And this is around the time when we were just starting to see like behind the scenes, like quality behind the scenes videos coming out as well. So, and I started subscribing to magazines and seeing how all my idols are doing making films. And at that point for me, it was just really just like a bit of fun and a little bit of a hobby. But then I started to just feel like, actually, I'm pretty good at this. And then saw that there is a career in it. Actually, I think the thing that kicked me off down the path was when I was in high school and had a real passion for filmmaking. And I was the guy at school who always had the school's video camera on my shoulder. I'd be filming the theatre performance or the sports event, or I'd be the guy at the assembly with the video camera.
Right.
Just because I always wanted to be playing with cameras, I guess. I'd take it home on weekends and make little movies. But then, my dad was incredibly supportive. He saw that I had a love for it, and he just came across this book one day. It was a book published by the Australian Film, Television, Radio School, and bought that for me and said, "Here, you might learn having a little flick through this." And I think the one thing I took away from it was just the fact that there is a school, and I've now discovered there's a lot of schools where you can go and just study film, 5 days a week and make films with other students who just want to make films. And it's like, this is like my dream. This is like, wouldn't that just be brilliant? And so just really set that as a goal to go to that film school. And it took me a while, and it was being a post-graduate school. I did go through art school first.
Right.
And I now realize was such a benefit for me as a cinematographer.
Right.
Because, going to art school, I was given such a great foundation in, it started with, we had painting, we had sculpture, we had graphic design, typography, and art history was a big component too. And getting to, to study the works of the great masters and really look at them closely and look at the techniques and look at what they observed, just was so eye-opening to think about how to apply that to cinematography. And so art school actually was brilliant.
You went to art school first. Was that in Perth or was that in New Zealand?
It was in Perth. Yeah.
You touched on how like the film industry in Perth is it's obviously a lot smaller than Hollywood. How did that transition occur from you? Because obviously you work on lots of big budget productions now. How did that transition from Perth art to studying film come to you?
Yeah, well, I just started seeking out anything film or TV in Perth, and there wasn't a huge amount then. There's a lot more now, but there was some TV series that were shooting there, kids' TV series. A lot of commercials would come and shoot there, and I just started to befriend anyone that I could find any connection with them. I joined the Australian Cinematographers Society. They had a small branch in Western Australia at that point. It's a lot bigger now, but I think there's probably only like 12 members back then, and so there I was, a kid, still a student when I joined up with those guys. But it was just a case of one thing leading to another. I'd meet someone who had something coming up and say, "Can I be involved in any way?" And it might just come out and be a observer or get to be a video split operator on a production, and then that would lead to making some new relationships that would lead on to the next thing, and just would grow from there.
Got you. And so where did you study your postgrad?
So I moved to Sydney, and there's the Australian Film, Television, Radio School, which is a great school. It's one of the top film schools of the world. And it's when I was there, it was very competitive to get in. They'd only have 4 cinematography students, 4 students in each strand,
right?
Which meant it was competitive. It also meant that we just had access to so many fantastic resources. We'd get to shoot. We were shooting 35mm film, and
wow.
We would get to work with each of the other directors, so we'd get to sample a little bit of different ways of working and different styles, and we'd get to take film cameras home on weekends and shoot music videos or little projects with our actor friends that we'd meet from NIDA or other acting schools, and just became this great creative community of let's play and let's see what we can come up with.
Amazing. And so how did that heat up into your first production?
Yeah, I have to say I was pretty lucky. Not everyone at film school kind of gets a break. I kind of had one land in my lap in a way when I was in my first year at film school. And I think, I realized quite early on as a cinematographer or as a creative in general, you do need to have some form of portfolio. So I've always been cutting my own show reel. And at the end of my first year at film school, when all the other students were going back to their families, I mean, a lot of them were from other states and from New Zealand. There was only a few of us left in Sydney, and I stayed there over the Christmas break and just made the most of the film school being open to us. Without classes, we'd go in and use the theatre and watch stuff on the big screen. And I used one of their edit suites to cut together a show reel of the work that I'd shot that year. And I just had one of those moments where I just finished cutting my show reel. I was pretty happy with it, cut it to a nice piece of music, and then went into the cinematography students' room, and an email had just literally just landed saying there's an international production coming out of Germany looking for cinematographers in 5 different continents. And they wanted directors as well, but it came to me looking for, and this is one that I've just forwarded on randomly, wanting, teams to shoot this international production for a German company where they want to have, it was all about technology, and the concept of it was that it was for Siemens technology. They had put on this event at the World Expo in Hanover that year, and they wanted this international production which would show the way that Siemens technology at that point was being used in the different continents, and to be able to communicate and to share information globally. So to visualize that and communicate that, they were looking for different teams that could shoot each of those portions that would then be presented on this epic screen that would then shift between the different continents and the different characters. And it was a really ambitious project. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, this is the kind of thing I want to do. This sounds brilliant. And so I had the fresh show reel, replied straight away, got the show reel off to the producers who were in Frankfurt, and a couple of days later I got the gig and was on my way off to I shot that in Melbourne, but that was working with the German production company, and there was an Austrian producer who was absolutely brilliant and lovely, Peter Schellnast, who at the end of that production said, hey, do you want to come and shoot some more stuff with us, and I want to take you back to Germany and work on some commercials. And so I did that for a little while, and it was an interesting sort of turning point in my career, because I had really had my sights set so much on going to the film school, and particularly wanted to be making feature film drama. And here was this incredible opportunity, which I'm so glad I leapt on. But I had this opportunity for this decision, this sort of crossroads, because more commercials started to be offered to me, and I thought, wow, I could keep this going for a while. And I was meeting all these cool Berlin film directors who were driving Maseratis and had the model girlfriends and living the commercial dream. And but I hadn't finished film school. I was still in between my 2 years.
Right.
And so then I did a lot of soul searching and thought, should I just stick with this and flick film school? And it just occurred to me, no, look, where I want to be in the future is making feature films. It's not really commercials where I want to be. So I packed my bags and went back to Sydney and went back to film school, and was so happy and so glad that I did it. And it really did open my eyes to a whole lot of techniques, but also just the confidence as well.
Yeah.
So while working on my final year projects, I started to bring in a lot of those things that I'd learnt, and from that experience brought that into my final year films. And I felt like I was, just improving in leaps and bounds with everything that I shot, and came out that year with a really great show reel that I was very proud of, and that led to some other opportunities. And very quickly, in terms of a career trajectory, I was into my first feature film 2 years out of film school, which is pretty rare.
You touched on that when we met. Talk to us about that first feature.
Yeah, well, I had a short film which was nominated for a big award and played at some film festivals, and there was a directing student who was in my year at film school, Steve Pazwolski, who he had directed a short which I didn't shoot but was absolutely brilliant, and that was nominated for an Oscar.
Right.
And he talking about grabbing opportunities. He was in Los Angeles. He was at the Oscars, and he said the first question, or one of the top 3 questions he was always being asked was, what's next, and what's your feature going to be? What have you got? And he quickly realized that these questions are being asked because he had some heat on him, and if he had a good answer, it could lead to an opportunity. And I don't want to be telling his story, but how I remember him describing it to me was that he was, during those days that he was there, he was just thinking, what's a great film I can pitch? What's something that's going to appeal? And so he did pitch to someone, I can't remember who it was, but that he thought what would be a great film is a teen skate drama, which would be in the style of what was actually a great and a big hit in Australia when we were kids, was a film called BMX Bandits. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It was Nicole Kidman's first film.
Yes.
It was in the 80s. It was a huge hit, and it was a film that was made for, it wasn't a big budget, but it was really cool, and it did really well. And so he thought, well, let's do a BMX Bandits of a skater generation, and sort of pitched it wasn't a complete reworking of it. It was just like, that's the general vibe of it.
Yeah.
And he just started some traction, and people thought, yeah, that sounds like a winner. And he got support. He wrote a screenplay, and that was his first feature, and also mine. And I was given that opportunity to shoot with him because we had a really great relationship. We'd done a few shorts before at film school. He wanted to have a friend as his ally, as his cinematographer, and the producers felt that it was worth giving me a break to do that, which can be quite hard in the independent cinema world to get that first break, because there is, you have to obviously be approved by the studio and the producers and the financiers, and often, and also particularly by the completion bond guarantors, who are, the ones putting up the bond, like basically the insurance that this film will be finished on time and on budget. And taking a risk on a first-time director is, it's always something they're always a little bit wary of. But when they've got a first-time director and a first-time director of photography, like they're a little bit, they're going to be a little bit nervous, obviously. But no, I got that break for better or worse.
Awesome. And what was that film called?
Deck Dogs.
Deck Dogs.
I'm not surprised you haven't heard of it or seen it.
I remember you saying you got to work with Tony Hawk on that one.
Yeah, Tony Hawk was the main, the basic premise was three young guys from the suburbs, keen mad skaters. They've got some good tricks, and they see that there's a big skate comp happening at the bowl at the beach in Sydney and Maroubra, and they go on a journey on their boards. They skate into the city and meet their idol Tony Hawk, and are there to compete in the big event.
Wow. Okay.
I won't say any more than that because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who's going to go out and see it.
If I was a producer and someone put that on my table as like a sort of a script, I'd be like, this sounds awesome,
Yeah.
Were you like an avid skater as well, like before you worked on that? Like, was it something that was quite close to your heart?
Well, no, not to be perfectly honest, no. I mean, I have skated and probably spent more time falling over and hurting myself, but I totally grew up with that world. Had friends that were skaters. In fact, I kind of felt like I was the guy who would go out with his buddies while they're skating or surfing, and I'd be doing the videos or shooting the photos, so I kind of had a pretty good understanding of the tricks and how, what was a good way of shooting it, what do skaters want to see when they're watching a skate trick on the big screen. So I felt like I had a bit of knowledge there, but we also brought on some incredible specialists as well. Like Tony brought his own DP over, who shoots a lot of his like X Games stuff, and he's a brilliant skater, and he would get in the bowl with him and handhold the 16mm camera and get amazing shots. So I had some good collaborators too.
Yeah, and I guess like from that experience, I mean, it was your first feature. I'm sure you learned a lot from that experience. It's probably like a baptism of fire. Where did that take you after that? What was the next project after working on Deck Dogs?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the more I sort of spend time in the industry, I kind of see similarities between being a cinematographer and being an actor. I mean, actors are obviously a lot more in the foreground. It's their faces up there on the screen, but in the same way that an actor can get typecast, or that an actor's judged for their last performance or how successful their last film was, and I'm often judged similarly, more so from those who are going to be financing a project than those who I'm going to be working with creatively. So that's sort of always a tough road to tread because generally most cinematographers I talk to, and I certainly found that with people are coming to you because they want you to do the same thing you did on the last project or something else you've done that they really like.
Right.
And you can very easily get pigeonholed as a certain type of artist. And I was conscious of that, and wanted to branch out and wanted to also be considered more of a serious filmmaker and like a grown up kind of filmmaker, not just doing teen movies. So
yeah,
I felt like I wanted to be selective with choices after that, and it ended up being a while before I got my next feature. To be honest, I mean, I think it was probably about 4 years before I did another feature film. But that was a good one, and I'm really proud of that. And it was a film called The Black Balloon. We had Tony Collette in it, and a bunch of other all fantastic cast were in there, and Alyssa Down was the director, who was just fantastic, and she's gone on to have an incredible career. She's doing really well. But that was that I felt like that was the film that kind of really did a lot more, sort of put me on the radar of a lot of people, and it literally did. Like that's how it was that film that led on to a lot of other projects after that, because it was very successful in Australia and New Zealand, and won an award at Berlin, won the Crystal Bear at Berlin, and so that was definitely a great career step.
Before that film was released, you said there was like 4 years before you started working on it, and I'm assuming because it won awards, it opened lots of doors for you. But those 4 years before you started working on it, what was going through your mind as someone that's passionate about filmmaking, as being a cinematographer, and just having that kind of, I don't want to say a lull, but that sort of quiet period? How did you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long time between credits, but there was and it wasn't really a quiet period because I was doing a lot of other stuff, which was great. And I was really evolving as an artist, I think, and as a human being too. I mean, I did a lot of documentaries and music videos and some commercials, and it was playing with some new techniques, and found some other really great working relationships. And I was like 4 years between shooting films. It wasn't like I wasn't working towards getting those opportunities. And I mean, I was attached to a bunch of different projects that, for different reasons, didn't happen, or would they would keep pushing, and then I wouldn't be available because I was committed to something else, and so someone else would end up shooting it. So it wasn't really. I don't think as a filmmaker or as any artist, you're not really having long quiet times. It might be a bit of a period between big gigs, but I think you're always finding ways to keep yourself busy or advance yourself.
So you kept yourself busy, which is awesome. You work on Black Balloon, which kind of changes your trajectory, and then you start to work on some other stuff. When did you become accredited by the Australian Cinematographers Society?
Yeah, well, I've been very much a active member of the society since I was a student, and and I won a few awards for some of my short films. But it was when I made The Black Balloon, that was when I put in my you nominate to be selected or to be judged for accreditation, and I felt like that was the time, and they granted me the accreditation just before the film came out, if I remember correctly. So I did get to have those letters on my after my name on that film, which does, for a cinematographer, it does mean a lot. It does feel like
yes.
I mean, an accreditation is it's a peer reviewed by a select group of industry masters who will say, yeah, this person is of that international standard that we're going to proudly put the letters of our association after their name. And therefore, if you're considering hiring a cinematographer, to see those letters will really mean something. There's got to be some integrity to the society for that to be the case, and they don't take it lightly, giving people those letters. But I think that, I mean, the idea of it is that if you are a studio or production and you're going to hire an accredited cinematographer, then you've got someone with a seal of approval that this person is of a certain level and standard and talent and quality that they're worthy of it.
Amazing. It's important to understand, we're kind of in this digital revolution, which is now about a generation old. And through that period, the democratization of creativity, particularly photography and film, is so widespread that it's important to ensure that that there is a quality control there. Otherwise, you don't know who you're going to be working with. So it's really interesting to hear that it's been useful for you, and it's important for you. So that's led you to work on lots of different projects, and we're going to talk about them in a second. But I just wanted to talk about some of the broadcasters you work with, because obviously you worked with loads. You worked with Sky, you worked with BBC, Netflix, loads of big names. Just from your experience, what are the differences of working with a traditional broadcaster like the BBC and a progressive studio like Netflix?
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. I mean, most of it is sort of more what I'm observing than necessarily me being right there on the front line with dealing with the broadcasters. But I mean, I think there are certainly. I've been in plenty of like tone meetings is often what that's referred to, where I have had usually it's a representative of the production company who has been brought on by the broadcaster or streamer rather than necessarily the streamer themselves. I mean, I have done tone meetings with, like, Sky would be there, or there'd be did one where there was someone from the BBC in the room or on the Zoom call. But I think it's interesting because I think when I first did, do you know what a tone meeting is?
Give us a kind of idea just for those listening.
Yeah, I think what I first thought it was is different to what I realize it is now. I mean, it's generally led by a producer who's bringing the team for the project once it's already been commissioned, and you're a couple of weeks out from production, and you'll sit down with the financiers, the streamers, the production company, the execs, and present your vision for what it's going to be, what it's going to look like, who's going to be in it, the costumes, the lighting. They'll want to see some examples of sort of the direction it's going in. And so like I kind of first thought, okay, this is me, getting into the detail of how I'm going to approach things, and what I want to achieve creatively, and the techniques I'm going to use and the things I'm going to bring on to it, which I think they found that stuff exciting and intriguing, but wasn't really what they were there for the meeting. I think a lot of it was really just to see that we were not going to deliver something they didn't want or expect. I mean, the only question I've ever been asked in a tone meeting is, it's not going to be too dark, is it? And our star's going to look, she's going to look glamorous, right? She's got to look beautiful, okay? And that's pretty much all I really want to hear from a cinematographer, to be honest. But I do find that it's it does vary from different streamers, what that meeting is. And I think that's kind of hopefully that's sort of one of the last times you hear from them before you're actually delivering it.
Yeah.
Well, as a cinematographer anyway.
Yeah.
If you do get a call or an email like after the first day, then that's something to worry about. I have had that where you get the oh my God, what are you doing? It's so dark email a couple of times. And that's often, a sort of an initial freak out, which sometimes happens because of technical things, not anything that I'm doing. It's often, well, this is the unfortunate thing, is that a lot of the execs for a lot of the shows do often watch the material that's coming in on their laptops. In their offices with reflections on their screens, often not great quality laptops I've observed either, and often ones with fingerprints all over them. So it's not really the best viewing situation to judge whether something's too dark. But that is something which a lot of the networks are nervous about, is are the audiences going to complain? Are we going to get some bad press? Is there going to be memes coming out about how dark our show is and making a fool of us? So that's really most of their main concerns, to be honest, when it comes to what I'm doing with the project. But also I have to be honest, sorry, I have also been given challenges where it is we want this to be unlike any other show that is on air right now. We like, what have you got? What can you do that's going to make our show stand out from anything else? And what are your ideas? And that's really exciting, and that feels like a challenge. And that's something I've learned how to do over time too, is how to present those ideas as well. How to, you can talk till you're blue in the face about what you're going to do and techniques and what have you. But if you can present some visual, whether it's a lookbook, a mood board, or an animatic, or there's even more elaborate ways of doing some pre-visualization these days. If you can present something that's exciting and shows the direction you're going in, that's often a way to get some enthusiasm. But I do feel like that is also an opportunity. This is what I've now realized, what those tone meetings are good for me as an artist, is that is also my opportunity to kind of get a seal of approval, a kind of a nod to say, okay, yep, you've run it by us. Hopefully we're not going to see any surprises when we're sitting there watching the edit or watching your footage. You've told us what you're going to do, and now go away and do it. And so you do feel like you can then confidently go into a production and then just work freely. A big part of my process now, and I pretty much insist on it, is that at least a week out from the shoot, we do some camera tests, and that's with the actors, with hair and makeup, with costume, and those tests I will show to people and just let them know that this is what we're thinking. This is the style. This is the lensing, the lighting. This is how dark it's going to be. This is the filters I'm using. This is how beautiful your actress is going to look. That kind of stuff, so that it kind of lets people just relax a little bit, because they're seeing, okay, great, this is going to look good. Or it also gives them an opportunity to say, actually, that's not what we expected. Where you had something else in mind, and so you have enough time to correct and get or to convince them or get on some path that everyone agrees to, rather than that happening at the end of day one's shoot and everyone thinking that you've gone and done something that they didn't want.
A lot of people forget that, particularly in film, when you're working on something, when everyone is working towards a creative vision, the filmmaking is a collaborative experience, and there's so many cogs to the machine, and
absolutely
you have to understanding how to I don't want to say manipulate the psychology of the situation, so that you can communicate your vision, so that the client or whoever it is involved understands the value of what's being made, is really important. But also having that conversation as early as possible, making sure that the people who are paying for this project are part of that creative direction. Not completely. You don't want, obviously you don't want producers coming in and say, change that, do this, blah, blah, blah. They need to trust in you. They need to value you and what you're going to give them. But just that tone meeting is the starting point for this collaborative process that you're going to go through, that could last sometimes for years. It could be a 3-month project, it could be 6-month project, or it could be like a year's project. So it's, you're right. It's you've got to be careful about how precious you are with your creativity, but at the same time you need to manage the expectations of everyone that's involved.
Absolutely.
You've gone on to do these really big things. Let's talk about some of the projects. So the first one I want to talk about, just because it's like one of my favorite thrillers, I love this movie. You got to work with Jordan Peele on Get Out, the Oscar-winning Get Out. Tell us about that process. Like, what was it like to work with him, but also what was it like to work on that project?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was just brilliant, and it's one of my favorites too. But I mean, that was an incredible opportunity. I mean, I wasn't the main unit director of photography on that film. That was Toby Oliver, who was a brilliant cinematographer who I've known since very early on in his career and my career. We've been bouncing into each other throughout the industry since we were first starting out. But that arose. Well, that was sort of a series of fortunate events where Toby was actually doing a different Blumhouse film originally, which was Insidious Chapter 4. And he needed a camera operator for the last, I think it was like 2 weeks of the shoot. And although I'm not generally camera operating for other DPs, it came by me, and I thought, what a great opportunity to work with Toby and to work on a Blumhouse project, and to just to have an opportunity to learn some stuff too. And camera operating is fun, particularly on a movie like that.
Yeah, and we're talking about Get Out right now.
This is in Insidious Chapter 4.
Sorry,
so I did some camera operating for him on that.
Yeah.
And at that point, Toby was like back-to-back Blumhouse movies. He did a whole bunch of them. And he had shot the main unit of Get Out and sometime earlier. And something which Blumhouse do, and I think is actually a really brilliant approach to filmmaking, is they will always they generally intend to have some screen tests, test screenings rather, to audiences, and reevaluate where things are at, and if they feel they're on a winner, and if they feel there's some value in investing a bit more money and shooting an alternative ending, or having another go at a scene that they didn't have enough time for, or maybe they realize that what they shot isn't working as well as it could, so they could do some pickups, that they'll put together a decent budget and get the actors back together, go back to the location and shoot some pickups, which is what I got invited to do. Toby couldn't do his pickups because he was on another Netflix project to that point, and I was available, and he put me in touch with Jordan, and we had a Zoom meeting and got along really well. And I'm a big fan of I love Key and Peele, and I love what Jordan's doing. So for me, it was a no-brainer to want to be involved with that. And so I did get to see a rough cut of the film, and which was absolutely brilliant at that point. But I also read the rewrites for what they wanted to do, and I could see what a great opportunity it was to just really finesse some of the scenes, and there was a new ending from what the original ending was.
Right. Okay.
And when Jordan got to shoot the opening scene with Toby, it was on a night which it rained, and they didn't have enough time, and they didn't really get to shoot it in the way they wanted. So it was an opportunity to reshoot the opening scene, the single Steadicam shot.
Wow.
And so I got to be there for those. And Jordan is such a wonderful man to work with. I mean, this was still early on in his career. I mean, I haven't worked with him on a project since. I mean, he's his films are going from strength to strength, obviously.
I mean, he's a cultural icon now within film. And before that film was released, he obviously had a lot of kudos and people loved what he was doing. But that film kind of changed cinema, and also changed his identity. Could you kind of feel that while that film was being made? Like, did you understand where this was going to, or were you not aware of that?
No, I was definitely aware of that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, I knew we were on a winner, and I got to speak to some of the cast too, and they had already seen where it was, and so they were already, they were giving high fives. They're like, "This is brilliant." Like, I got to talk to Catherine Keener, and she was like, "Isn't this so cool? Like, can you believe how awesome this movie is?" And
Wow.
So she knew that it was going to be brilliant. I think, and I'm sure, Jordan had high hopes, but I don't think he ever really expected it to be the smash hit that it was.
Just from that, you get to work with an author like him. You start to move into new spaces. Tell us about some of the other projects that you've worked on since then.
Yeah, well, actually, a big part of my my life and career story, which I haven't mentioned, is that my wife, Claire McCarthy, is a director.
Yes.
Yeah, we actually met at film school in Sydney years ago. She was a year below me, but we kept crossing paths. I operated Steadicam on her final first year project at the film school as well. So we kind of we knew of each other, and we started to bump into each other more and more, and it started to turn into like, let's do a movie together. We did a short film together, which then led on to her first feature film, The Waiting City, which we shot in Kolkata, India, and that was a great experience, and did quite well as a film too, and working with some really A-class actors in that one also. And so working with Claire, my wife, has become a big part of my decision-making of what projects I go on to, whether it's in choosing a project that's going to fit in between me doing a Claire McCarthy film, to also just, wanting to work with, if I'm going to get opportunities to work with other directors outside of those moments of doing her films, I want to choose those wisely and do interesting projects.
Yeah,
particularly if they're quite different too. The interesting thing that Claire and I have, it was never really intended to go down this path, but we did do our second feature we did together was a film called Ophelia, with Daisy Ridley and Naomi Watts and George Mackay, and that was that was set in the medieval period. And we shot that in the Czech Republic. We shot in amazing castles, and we shot at the studios. And that I learned a lot about doing candlelight and firelight and sort of period lighting, which did start to take us down a path of lots of offers of period films and period series. We did The Luminaries together, which was a Victorian era set in the South Island of New Zealand, the Gold Rush era. And then that led on to we did The Colour Room set in the 1920s, and we did Domina, which was a series for Sky, which is set in ancient Rome. So we did go down and we still sort of got a few other historic projects, which we love and are really exciting. And I absolutely love doing period projects. But there is a concern from a lot of filmmakers that if you start doing too many of those, you do get typecast as the period movie guy.
What's it like working with your wife?
It's brilliant. I love Claire. I respect her a lot as an artist and as a woman, and I think that it's a really great opportunity to work so closely with a director who I feel so connected to. Particularly, I think it like we've gotten to a point now that we do have a shorthand. We know what each other likes in certain circumstances, and I think she does. I mean, I love the fact that she challenges me a lot with stuff too, in terms of like, is this really the best decision, or is that the best angle, or I think we could do better, or she'll throw in. She's an amazing artist herself, so she'll throw in some ideas, and I feel like that relationship makes me a better cinematographer as well, in a way that some other directors might not speak so candidly and push so hard.
I listened to a podcast where Emily Blunt was talking about, working with her husband, John, and, obviously they worked on The Quiet Place together, and just, she just was very open about how their working relationship is very different to their partnership as husband and wife and mother and father to their kids. She didn't realize it would allow her to be creative in ways that she never expected, if that makes sense. And it's awesome that you've got to work with her. And Denson, we have to get her on this show. Actually, I'll get my producer to contact you guys after this one.
You guys would have a good chat.
Just talking about the luminaries, there's an actor that I've seen on the big screen over the last few years, and I love him. And it's really, for me, being not just a person of color, but also a Gujarati, seeing a British Gujarati on screen.
Yes.
Himesh Patel, you got to work with him on that. Tell us about that experience. What was he like, as an actor, and also just working with you?
Yeah. Oh, Himesh is great. He's a lovely guy and a true professional, and fun on set too. Fun in just sort of that he's lighthearted and not putting too much pressure on things, but still absolutely focused and professional. Yeah, I was really impressed by Himesh. Actually, if you've seen the series, his character, he's one of the main main characters of the whole series, which culminates in a court hearing at the end of the whole 6 episodes, where he basically talks through everything that has happened and occurred, and we have flashbacks throughout that monologue that he does. And it's about 6 pages, I think it was, and he had to. Well, he didn't have to. In fact, we did say, look, we understand this is going to be pretty heavy. You've got 6 pages of unbroken dialogue. Should we try and break it up in some way? And we just shoot it in blocks. And we had 3 cameras for that, so we can do multiple angles. And I made the suggestion that we could get auto cues, and we could position them in the amongst the set, so you can always look like you're turning to act to extras or cast members, but you can read the auto cue. And he was just, no, I don't need any of that. He just absolutely confidently, like, you guys don't need to worry about that. I'm like, oh, okay. I think we were obviously more worried about it than what he was. And then when it came to shooting it, he just totally nailed it. And I was so blown away by how well, not only did he deliver a huge bulk of dialogue, but did it with such conviction and with such a layered performance as well, which is something that I love seeing with an actor, a performance where you can see the shift in them throughout that scene or that delivery, where they, you can see the emotions shift and change, and they're on a journey as they're telling a story or delivering or receiving new information. Like, for me, that's the most exciting thing to see happen to an actor, is and that's when it truly feels like someone's in the moment, when they are reacting to every word or every new bit of information that comes, and it's really great when you see it and it's subtle enough that it's not on the nose and it feels realistic. And he certainly did that. It was so good to see that he had that ability of delivering a very natural, realistic performance that was also just so engaging.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on something quite interesting there, like being a cinematographer, because as an actor, being on set and seeing these super talents perform and being there when they're being captured is it's like a really exciting thing. But for you to actually be looking down that lens while they're doing it in real time, that must be a real joy.
It is a joy. It's really cool. And actually, you know what? It makes me think maybe I can change my answer to what is a cinematographer, because I think I've realized more and more that it's not just about, making the nice lighting and the good shots and getting all the technical stuff together, but it really is creating an environment on set that the actors feel comfortable enough, that they feel confident enough, that and when I say confident, I mean more like, they're confident that I'm not going to do something that's going to make them look bad, or that's not going to, photograph them in a bad light.
Yeah.
But just they can feel, there's a trust. They can relax into the mode and just feel like I can build an environment with my crew that they can feel they can go there to those emotional places and not feel encumbered by the technology, or whether they have tip marks, or just that they can freely just deliver. I mean, that's something that I have learned over time, and that's probably also come from being married to a director, is just the importance of creating that space and holding that space for an actor to really go there. Because that's what people are tuning in for. They're not that. I mean, if you got nice cinematography, that's a real bonus. But if you're noticing the cinematography, then you're not doing a great job of capturing what's most important, and that's a performance. It's storytelling. It's taking people on a journey with these characters.
We're starting to run out of time, but I need to ask you these last 3 questions, just because. And dude, I feel like I can speak to you forever. Maybe we do an episode 2 after we've got your wife on the show. But no, really brilliant stuff, and I know people listening are going to get a lot of value from what you said. You're a father. How do you balance your work life with being a parent?
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's an easy answer to that. It's always been, I mean, we're in a particular circumstance where Claire and I are working together. So our son usually he travels with us. He's 12 now, but he grew up on set. I mean, the first time he was on set was as a baby. In fact, he had a role as a baby being breastfed and Claire was in it. She was the one breastfeeding him, obviously. But he was like, I think he was only like 4 weeks old or something, and he was on set. And then I did a music video in Indonesia that he came along for, and he was there for that. But he's growing up where we would put him in a scene. He'd be a chimney sweep in the luminaries, and he's a kiln boy in the color room. He's during the time of child labor, we would get him all covered in soot and do a bit of child labor exploitation ourselves, I guess. But for us, it's been just having him being included in our lives, I guess. And that I think because he has been included in the way he has, that he feels very comfortable on set, and he comes along and he meets the camera team, and he'll hang out. I mean, he gets a bit bored with it after a while, as most people who aren't actually actively involved on the set, they'll get bored after half an hour probably. But yeah, I think it's that balance. It is a tricky thing, and it's meant that he's had a life of coming in and out of different schools. Whenever we've moved around with different projects, we would have to put him in a local school, an international school, and he'd be making new friends and then saying goodbye to those friends and then moving to somewhere else. So it's probably him who's had the bigger challenge than we have.
Yeah.
But I think that sort of shaped him to be a really cool kid who's good at making friends. And
yeah, at least you're including him. Like, there's some people in the entertainment space who really silo off, their child's upbringing from what they're doing. And the fact that you're integrating him it means that you get to spend time with your child, and see them form, which is time you'll never get back. So it's great to hear that you can do this. You can be a successful cinematographer or director and bring up your family. So that's wonderful to hear. If you were to meet yourself when you first got into this industry tomorrow, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, well, I think I'd just say hang in there, buddy. Like stay positive, and well, I think when I was younger, I used to stress a lot more in between each job. Just like am I like, when's the next job going to come along? When am I gonna get another break? Am I ever going to work again? How am I going to pay my rent? Those kind of stresses, which I now realize were pretty unnecessary, because an opportunity would eventually arise, and then I'd realize, oh man, that week I just spent stressing, I could have spent that chilling and doing something else and having some fun. So I think it really is just have a bit of confidence that things are going to work out. But that said, making and finding relationships and grabbing onto opportunities is so important. I was thinking about it the other day, and when you just mentioned how you and I first met at that industry event, and this is the advice I give to my younger self, certainly, is that when you are at any of these events or any social situation, like if you do feel a connection and see someone in the same space who you think, oh, they seem pretty cool and wonder what their story is, like, just go over and introduce yourself. You never know what that's going to lead to. I mean, don't go in there thinking, oh, what can I get out of this person? Just think, why wouldn't I want to meet the most interesting people in this room and strike up a conversation, and who knows what that would lead to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very important advice because, when you're younger, you do have your insecurities, and there is a fear factor to the situation. So no, really important to like make and find relationships that ultimately will bring you opportunities.
Definitely.
Denson, you've been a real joy. This has been absolutely wonderful talking to you. I feel like I could talk to you for longer, and I feel like we should talk longer. We will. We'll find a pub, somewhere and do that.
That sounds great.
I know loads of people listening to this, they're going to get so much value from the information and the advice you've given us today.
Oh, good. I hope so.
If someone wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm on most of the social media format. I'm on Instagram. That's the one I probably would be most reachable on. I mean, I've got my website, densonbaker.com. Yeah, I'd be through those avenues. I mean, if it's for a professional gig, I've got my agent who's listed on that website. You can reach out to the agent. But I'm pretty. If you search me online, I'm pretty easy to track down, to be honest, in terms of like, personal contact details.
Awesome. Well, look, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for this. Those of you that are listening, again, thanks so much for the support on this podcast. We're starting to get about 2,000 downloads now per episode, which is really bizarre. Like, I just didn't think we'd have such a big community, but it's great to hear what you guys are thinking about these podcasts. And it's good to hear that you guys are getting value. If you're sharing, please make sure you use the hashtag Sanj Surati Talks, all one word. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are, please be good.